So this lecture is about how do you deliver your final report and how do you use GitHub for this particular class. And typically when we do this, we try to teach this as early as possible. Actually, GitHub was set up within the first week and you could have used GitHub for your submission. But one of the things that you know is you have this website, cybertraining-dsc.github.io. When you click here, right click, for example, on GitHub, you jump to the GitHub directory and you can go to Cybertraining DSC. And this is an organization in GitHub that contains a number of subdirectories. In here, when you scroll through, you will see that there are 12 pages of subdirectories. I believe there are 170, more than 180 subdirectories in there, where each student provides their own projects, and they're going back here till 2020. So if you want to look up someone's repository, what they have actually done as part of the class, you can look this up. Some have used it, some don't. So if you click on someone random here, this is from fall 2018 actually. And here you can see, for example, what they have done. They have, for example, created an article about Apache error. They have created something about thrift. Then they have created a report that they have done on some Setai disk activity and developed some code regarding this particular project. So you're doing something similar to this, but we have optimized the format for the report a little bit. And to showcase you how this works is, as I said, we have this particular web page. But when you go in here, there is an HID example directory in there. If you go in there, we try to keep up the outline on how we think it's best to organize your directory. The biggest thing is while we are very flexible in the assignment directory, we typically simply say, it's okay, you know, we do an assignment. Underneath you have a subdirectory called assignment-1, and then you put your assignment in there. And the assignment typically shouldn't start with assignment number 1, but it uses a proper title. You know, what did you really do there? Like, for example, you have analyzed maybe a topic in big data engineering that maybe simply says this is big data in drug discovery, for example. Then you would be putting your author name in here. You say, what's the problem, what's the solution, and what are the references. One of the things is the references, we simply, that don't show up as numbers, but we use this footnote syntax, which is in Markdown given, but it's not supported by GitHub. So that's the reason why you don't see them very well. But in our case, we just put references at the end, and it's very important that you put them at the end. If you have longer documents, we recommend that you put numbered sections up here. And when you look at the document, there must only be ever one headline with a single hash. There cannot be multiple single hashes here. Otherwise, the flow of the document doesn't work, because our documents are always structured: title, subsection, subsection, subsection. This is valid for all assignments as well as for all reports and project reports that we do. So if you want to find out the newest version of the project HID, you can, if you haven't started yet, you can just go in here and you can look how this directory looks like and then replicate this into your HID repository under the project tag. So when you look into HID, there's one change that we have made since we posted this, since I posted this to your directories. There is one change here that's called the index for the editing, because naturally when you go into the project, you see this thing is called not project.md, but index.md. So you need to be making sure that all the links that you click on and into your repository actually do work, and a proper link comes up. So you can make that change now if you want to your projects, but I will be explaining a little bit more on the project organization. So, and this is where our template lives, and you can simply copy it. Naturally, one of the things I have done is I have put plenty of spelling errors in here so that you can figure out if this thing actually works. One of the good features that I've added is something called GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions are automatically running programs after you have committed a change to your directory, or to the file, basically, not the directory, but to the file that is living in projects. This is not enabled on the assignments, but it's only enabled for the projects. And the way this works, and you don't have to necessarily understand this, there is an actions directory here where we have two scripts that I have developed. I have actually written those. One is called check report. And if you take a look at that check report script, you will be able to see what the script looks like. Here's the check report. And this is essentially a YAML file that describes what needs to be executed. It installs Python. It installs a particular version of Python. It gets our markdown check script via wget. This is this particular location. And then runs this check on that index file. Naturally, if you want to have additional files, such as your assignments running here, then you would be adding a new run thing here to include, in addition to this one, also the run for your assignments if you want to do that. But that's not necessary. We actually think it's enough to have this run just on your projects and not necessarily on your assignments. So how does such a script look like? Well, if I copy this link here, you can then open your browser, you can pass this, and you can take a look at what the script looks like. And this is not a very sophisticated script, but it is just a script that goes through a couple of markdown features that I found important that you guys adhere to. So we, for example, figure out if you have a table or a figure in there, if that has a heading, how many words you have. It ignores for word count everything that looks like code or that does look like a comment, and it figures out if your section numbers, section headers are numbered or not numbered, at least some of them. It figures out if you have an abstract in this and if you have a table of contents in there, and those kind of things. And then I just simply said, okay, it would be useful to have 3 sections at least, an abstract, introduction, and conclusion in there, and so forth. And then it does some clever finding of if you're citing, for example, your images with figure names, what you're doing with code inclusion, and how do you do tagging with certain HTML tags. And then the other thing is I will be checking, we are checking automatically these words. And we found that these words don't actually contribute to the quality of the report because they are projecting what you're going to be doing in future. But we are not interested in what you're doing in future. We are interested in what you're doing. And we don't need a plan of your project. We need what your project looks now as it were to be written in a finished stage. Thus, we don't accept words such as prefer, or I will prefer to do this, I will choose and choose. We may be having to remove these words if you, in case your report uses them. We found also that students use the word thought in such an inconsistent fashion. So just make sure that this is there. And then we certainly don't want the word I in there. Naturally, you could have a report that analyzes Twitter feeds or whatever other thing, and you are interested in the word I. If that is the case, just please let me know. We can rewrite this particular check for you, or you can even do that with my help together, so that these words are being not hindering your progress. At the end, it actually puts out how many words you have written and how many lines your report is long. And I will get to the number of lines in a minute, because there are two different schools here. That one that I prefer is have all the lines 79 characters wide or 80 characters wide, while the other ones don't even care. And I will show you this in a moment, what this means. So that's this particular script. We have, in addition to this, also under workflow, a status script. That status script just simply checks if you have submitted the final version. And the nice thing about both of these scripts are, when you go into actions, they are showing up here. One here is, in this case, is green, and the other one is red. So this is also being indicated by a little X here that essentially says some commit that I made conflicts with the scripts that are being called in actions. And so you can easily see this on this X. And you can go ahead into your project, for example, where this index is being called. I have included for you the icons here. If you click on them, they bring you back to the output of these scripts. So I can go to parsing, and this is the action that is being collected here. And I can click on this, and it says here build. I click on the build, and here you can see what the output of this particular script is. Here I'm setting up the job. Here I run some setup still. Everything is still set up, but you remember here is I get the script from somewhere. That's a really good thing that this actually succeeds. And then I'm running the script. And this thing says, hey, there is no error here, but there could be some other errors that we don't test yet, or do not test. So don't assume when this thing passes, this is actually absolutely correct. This is just giving you a hint, okay? When you go to the other icon, you get also to this window here, but you see the red failure. I click again on build. Here, it's already visible what's actually happening here. In line number 82 of my file index.md, there is a space at the end. Line number 98 is the same. Line number 116. We will not review any documents that have a red check mark. I have found that the minimal requirements that we have through these run checks improve the quality of your document significantly. So just do this. The only other thing is if you realize that you get reported that you should use a word or something like this, and you really have to use that word, either work around this or let me know, and then we relax the condition for this. So having said this, if you have a report that shows up as red for the index, we will not even look at this. It's as good as not submitted. It's your responsibility that you make sure that these checks are being passed. And we will demonstrate this on one student today, so that we can figure out how to efficiently do that, okay? The project structure is really super simple. In the index file, as you can see, we have this particular outline. If you go here in the edits editor, you can take a look on how do you actually get that. And you can check this particular script out, okay? So you can even make modifications in here. But what you should not do is save this in Word, make the modification in Word, paste everything from Word in here, and then save. Because I'm going to be going ahead and make changes to your document. For example, this O2 and say here, this is a comment. If you were to just pass the entire file, you would be overwriting your comment. Once you do this, I will never look at your report again, ever. So because you are not following the GitHub rules. So how do we avoid doing that? The best way of doing this is to actually do this on the command line. So I can create maybe my directory mkdir class. So I have created now a class directory. This is now my directory. I need to go into class. This is where I will be storing my repository. So as you have heard, see, I'm here in my HID directory. You will have a different directory. I just showcase you this for my HID directory. I switch to SSH. This has the, and I will showcase you how you can do this yourself. This has the advantage that the commit is easier. So I'm checking out this while going here. I can copy this, or I can say Control A here and copy this and put this into my terminal. And I make the terminal just slightly a little bit bigger. And I say here clear. And I pass this in here, and then I say, it can say on the command line git clone. This works on all operating systems once you have Git installed. It is up to you to find out how to install Git onto your machine. So now this thing is being installed. If I do an ls here, the directory is there. I go into cd HID example directory. I go into my project. Now I find my index file in here. And now I can actually edit this in with the editor of my choice. In my case, the editor of my choice is Emacs. So I go into there, use Emacs, and here I can see how my document looks like, and I can make a modification. And as I said, this is on purpose. I have left some spelling errors in here, so I can now correct this particular spelling error. And now the file is corrected. I can once more say less maybe to look at the file. I see I have made my change. Now I need to commit my change. Sometimes if it's a new file, you have to add this file. So you say commit git commit add index.md. But because we already have this, we already did this, I can now say git commit -a, which says, okay, I have made a change. Which now I simply say correct spelling error. And I save the editor, and it says save this. And now this change is committed to my local file system. This is where the greatest confusion comes for. People sometimes simply say, oh, when I committed to my repository. I can showcase to you when I refresh this particular file under project, it is not yet there. So I refresh, as you can see, it says here is not yet there. The change is only done locally onto my local file system. Locally, it has been changed, but not in the repository. In order for me to push this to the repository from my local change, I have to do a second step. I simply say git push. And here, it will be pushing me into this. And dependent on if you have your key added to it, it will ask you for a password, and you have to use the passphrase that you are have done and can type it in. In many cases, you have an SSH key. The SSH key is located in the directory user/ssh. And there we have, for example, a public key. And that public key needs to be uploaded to your repository. So this is the key. This key you copy. This is a comment at the end. You don't need to have the comment, but you can copy this entire key. So I copy this now in my keyword. And now I go to my user environment in GitHub. I'm logged in. I can go to settings. And in settings, you will find SSH and GPG keys. Here you can now simply say add a new key. You can paste your key in here. See, I just pass this and you give it a name, new key. Then you can save this and your key will be added here, and you can use, instead of HTTPS authentication, you can use SSH authentication. So this is all pretty trivial. I don't do this right now because I have already that particular key included in this particular environment, so I don't really have to worry about that. And to use this on the Macintosh, for example, it's very, very easy. When you are in the terminal, you can say SSH add, and it will be asking you for that particular key, your passphrase that you have created. And you create such a key if you don't have one with SSH keygen. So it will be an assignment for you to make a decision if you want to use SSH or if you want to use HTTPS for your repositories. And I will be asking you if you have already made your decision up, because you probably have already read certain things about it. And you can let me know what you have actually done. So, but this is all very trivial, and this allows you to interact with your system. This also allows you naturally to check out what other students are doing. So remember, my keyboard is unfortunately broken. Remember that we have here an HID example. And now I want to go, for example, check out this particular student's repository. I can go here to this location. And here you probably have to use HTTPS because you are not authenticated to write into this. I am authenticated to write to this. So you can copy this here, and then you can simply say git clone and get this particular repository. So now one of the things that actually happens is this particular student, I can go into his directory, could have made a change at one point. Then in order for me to get the newest change, and this is what I recommend you to do always when you start working. So the student with number 359 should first do a git pull. Whenever you start working, do a git pull, because this way you get my changes. And I demonstrate this now, okay? So I am going in here, make a change in this particular document, say O2 demonstrate git pull, and I'm saving my content. See, this is there. But if I'm looking locally in this, I go now to CD project, maybe just to have an easier time. So I say less index. As you can see, this message is not there. So I have given you a tip. You would like to get the tip. How do you get the tip? You say git pull. Now this git pull can be executed in any location within this repository. It doesn't have to be on the home directory. It can be in a subdirectory. And now, as you can see, this tells me nicely which files have actually been changed. Oh, I should probably just do this. Cat index.md. Here, as you can see, this pull is there. So now I have beautifully introduced a new error. So I can remove the P. I commit this again. now I can say, so this is actually all there is to know about GitHub for us. Just remember that whenever you start, do a git pull. While you're working, it could be that I'm working, that you pull frequently and get the changes in. So now I would really like to go to each one of the repositories and comment on certain things. But before we do this, I have created a special repository on which all of you have access rights, write access rights, that we can look up. I look now up in the settings and see who has accepted the access rights, so manage access. In your project reports or in your assignments, you have given little red O's for things that I noticed that you may want to improve. And the improvement results usually in a general pattern that is useful for other people. So what you're supposed to be doing is whenever you have an improvement and you have finished the improvement, identify if there's a general lesson to be learned for others. Such as, for example, do I need an empty line after an image inclusion? Well, and here, you know, someone can already go ahead and repair the image inclusion with D. So I've done this yesterday night very quickly. So I've done a spelling error. So just you can go ahead and fix this. However, note that when you are doing this with the editor, with this editor here, so I'm just making that. If someone were to do this at the same time, you get a conflict and you can't submit. So you really need to be careful and communicating with others typically about when you do this or do this really, really quickly, right? So what I then recommend is that you write in Markdown format and then just simply open this and paste and copy, or you can naturally do this because this is just another repository here. I can go to my FAQ. You can now check this out via SSH in case you're using an SSH key. You can copy this. You can go into the class directory where you manage all your class stuff. I simply say git. So now it's there. So now, since I had already here a previous directory here, so I know now that we had a student with 53, right? So I can get that student's name, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and that's already there. So now I have all the directories in here. So now I can go to each one of your directories and look at your code. The one other thing I'm doing is I've mentioned before that I'm using Emacs, but there is another really beautiful editor out there that's called PyCharm. And when you are in PyCharm, there is a feature that's called Open Project. So you say open. And in open, you don't just use a normal project open, but you go to the directory where this particular thing is. And in my case, I think I had it under GitHub, and underneath here, I had it under C, and then here I had class, and then you open this. All directories in the subdirectory will be coming here on the side. I cannot do this here now because I have already done this. So I have now the C directory in here. In C, I had created the class directory. So I have here the class directories in there. Now I can go ahead and go in any one of these arbitrary directories. I can double click here on the file. I can see this particular file here. I can make a modification to this particular file. Here I can simply say, maybe here, Gregor made a modification. I'll do an O2, Gregor's mod. And now I need to be submitting this. I can do this from the command line, which is the preferred way of doing it. However, PyCharm has a git operation. I can commit the file. I can here put the commit message in there. Showcase commit via PyCharm. I can commit this. Now this change is being done locally. I can now push this into my remote directory. I can do push now here. And now I say push. And this way it's pushed into your remote directory. The nice thing is you can also do this with HTTPS. It saves your password and puts this in like some kind of caching mechanism so that you don't have to do this all the time. But now when we are going, let's figure out which directory did we modify. 358, right? So we can double check now if this is in there. Always good to double check so that you know that you have done your commits correct. It even says here the last modified directory, which you can see here. And we can go to the project, to the index. And here we see Gregor's mod is in there. This is how you update your thing. No complicated submission via Canvas anymore. In case Jeffrey would be asking for a Canvas submission, you would just simply copy this link here for this index, and then he can click on this and he can look at this. So there is no creation of PDF documents or anything like this needed. Okay.